it is one of the sunniest days we've had so far, Prem. So I wouldn't be surprised if some people have headed down to the pub.
Yeah.
We will see.
It's 4 minutes into our time, starting time. Even Rohit hasn't joined. Maybe he's joining after the first 30 minutes, considering he has COVID as well. So he's just conserving his energy, maybe.
Yes.
Actually, I would really love to hear about the book, Ed.
Yeah.
I would love to hear about it, especially when you said that it's so relevant about what was happening all day today.
Yes. Yes, it was.
I can't really wait to hear about it.
Well, it kind of changed. It rocks my world, this book, actually.
Yeah.
Did you want me to kind of just give you a bit of an overview as to why? Do you want me to start, or
let's start welcoming. There are a couple of people have joined, and we can welcome them, and we can start from or what you would like to talk about it, and then we can go from there. Sounds good. Hi Ben. Hi Maruwan. Is that am I saying your name right, Maruwan?
I think audio is still connecting.
Yeah, audio is still connecting. Hi Ben, how are you?
Hello, how are you? Great to see you guys. So I'm just at my kids' swimming lesson at the minute, so there's a bit of background noise, and I'll keep my video off. I'm happy to put it on for now.
That's all right. Hello.
I'm just in the swimming pool, but I'm an ex-colleague of Rohit, so I'm quite keen, and I'm hopefully picking up some stuff on the Agile circuit soon around lean thinking. So I really wanted to meet you guys, say hello, and learn a bit about what Rohit's doing, and also understand his format and style. It's always interesting when you get going on this stuff, how you feel a bit of an imposter. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to work with people probably know what we need. So, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Ben.
Nice. Yeah. Where are you based in the UK?
Yeah, so I'm based in Burton-on-Trent. So I work out of Coventry at the moment. I live in Burton-on-Trent at the moment. Previous to that, I used to work in Derby and like Birmingham, so fairly local.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
It's interesting that you mentioned the word imposter, which is always a bit of a light bulb for me, because I've just finished my master's in applied positive psychology, which was all about my kind of dissertation, which was all about how positive psychology can help with things like imposter syndrome. As a self-declared imposter, I also was drawn to this avenue of research, because I just think it's so fascinating how we can enter situations and feel like that. The
stories we tell ourselves in so many ways in life, but it's just literally that, isn't it? It's summarised by that, I feel.
Yeah.
If I can digress a little bit, just Rohit and I were talking about going on his podcast to talk about imposter syndrome. And then I thought that before going on that imposter syndrome, I must refresh the book that I like. And I read the book and showed it to my daughter, because she displays heavy imposter syndrome. And then she read it, and then she scored herself, and then now she's crying. Now she's crying that, oh my God, I have this imposter syndrome. I am not all right. I have this disease. And then she's crying, and then now she wants to go for counseling, professional help for her disease, and she doesn't want this to be locally. She doesn't want to be in her mom's couch. for this therapy. She doesn't want her mom to be her therapist.
Yeah. That's such a really common reaction. Is once we have the awareness, we almost take it to an identity level, and this is one of the dangers with pathologizing something like imposter syndrome and, you know, taking it to a disease model, but there's actually lots of strengths that sit within it. So if you ever want to talk about that offline, just
I will grab that opportunity. I will bug you later. Cool. Thank you. So, okay, Rohit himself is here. Rohit is connecting. Hi, Rohit.
Hello, sorry, I'm a little bit late because I was at work. So I'm just at my cousin's house. Yeah.
How is your health? How
yeah,
are
health.
you?
Yeah, I'm still have a little bit of cough, but I'm okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. We will start with the book, and it is going to be recorded. I think this is another reason probably people are thinking that it's live streamed, it's recorded, I can watch it later. It's a nice day. I'm going to go to the pub, or I'm going to open a can of beer and then sit outside or something like that. And that could be one of the reasons people are taking it easy. I think that's okay. That's okay for us, because at the end of the day, we don't want people to be burnt out. And that's one of the reasons we live stream and keep it available for people to come and watch it later, and it benefits people and people to come and watch it later, and that's fine. Let's go ahead I can't wait to hear from you, Ed, and let's go ahead with the book. And hi Matt. Matt is our all-time regular from the day when we started and this meetup. How are you, Matt?
Oh, on mute.
You're on mute, Matt.
Yeah, I'm very good. Thanks, Prem. How are you?
We are good. Thank you. I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so let's start. It's 10 minutes into our meetup time. Let's start, and I can't really wait to hear from Ed about this book he has been talking about. Go on, Ed.
Sure.
Start. Yeah, give the title and gives a little bit of intro and tell us about what is that so exciting about this book and the connections you see every day, especially today.
Well, just briefly, my name's Ed Midson. I work as an agile coach. I've been in organizational psychology for about 15 years now. Recently completed a master's in applied positive psychology. And so I try and blend the positive psychology side of things with agility and with cultural change. And it was in kind of associating with some of my colleagues and friends that are within that domain that this book hit my radar. And it's the book Reinventing Organisations by Frederic Laloux. And as you can see, it's not a thin book.
It's a bit blurred. If you remove the blur.
It's a bit blurred because I don't know if you can see it, but basically it's got a butterfly on the front. It's got two butterflies on the front of the keyboard, and just the title Reinventing Organisations. There's an illustrated version of this book, which is a light read. It kind of cuts about 50% of the content out of the book and uses illustrations to communicate a lot of the key messages in a much leaner text. And there's also an audiobook version of this, and I would thoroughly recommend that if you like an audiobook, because the chap that reads it has just got such a lovely voice and it communicates the messages beautifully. So there's a number of different ways you can engage with the material, but if you are someone that kind of likes the detail on things, then absolutely, there you go. So got the book being held up there. So I would really recommend getting the full version and having a good look through it. But one of the things that really spoke to me in this book was, for about 10 years when I was in this field, I was trying to speak to organizations about, how do we evolve past where we're currently at, and how do we get to like new levels of trust and autonomy and all these wonderful things that we talk about probably every day. And what this book really lays out is that over time, as human beings, we evolve, but we don't tend to evolve always gradually. we actually sometimes go through quite big leaps, especially when it comes to our consciousness. And as the consciousness of people has evolved, and as people, groups of people, or organizations, we kind of form normative behaviors. And each time we evolve, there's a different subset of behaviors, or what the book calls breakthroughs, that happen at each level of consciousness that we get to. And probably the three that are most relevant to us today are the last three that have emerged. Way before that, you've got things like the mystic kind of consciousness, or what they called the impulsive reds, which was very much about control and everything in that kind of domain. But the three that tend to be most prominent in organizations today are these last three, and they're called achievement orange. And the reason for the colors is that it's linked back to things like spiral dynamics. So you may have seen some stuff on that before. And I love the fact that it's been linked to Ken Wilber's work and Claire Graves' work around spiral dynamics, and, you know, our own consciousness and evolution as people, but it's kind of put in an organizational context. And it talks about the achievement orange organizations. They had a number of different breakthroughs. One of them was around innovation and the need for us to innovate. Another one was around the invention of a meritocracy. So rather than what was in the previous construct, which I think was amber, where, you know, your birthright got you to your position, the meritocracy meant that if you really worked hard and you really pushed yourself, you could get anywhere. And so it kind of leveled the landscape a bit more in terms of organizational contexts. But for all its benefits that came from it, you know, it's enabled consumerism and growth and all of these wonderful things, and innovation and these wonderful breakthroughs that have enabled people to really perform and excel in life. There's been some things that are kind of missing culturally for a lot of people. And so over time, that consciousness began to evolve into a new type of organization that emerged, which they call pluralistic green. And this is much more where organizations are more like families than they are hierarchies. But there's a parent, you know, there's someone that's kind of that's dad and mum, and they're kind of looking after everyone, and that, you know, and it's all very much like more like a family culture. And so there were some breakthroughs that came from moving into that, and the kinds of organizations that seem to adopt that kind of style were some of your new tech organizations that were getting born, and some charities and you know, public sector organizations that were really trying to come at things much more like this consensus, which was one of the key breakthroughs that pluralistic green arrived at, was this ability to have groups of people move forward towards a purpose, but with consensus. And then when we started to look at this next evolution that's coming out, this what they call evolutionary teal, which is this emergent type of organizational consciousness that started to come out. This is much more driven by their three key breakthroughs. The first one, which is self-management, so being able to self-organize and self-manage. Another breakthrough that they talk about in the book was this kind of movement towards wholeness, bringing our whole self to work, and not having to hide any of our authenticity, but being able to show up as our authentic selves in the workplace. And then the third breakthrough was around evolutionary purpose. So the purpose is not fixed, but we're all drawn towards it, and it's evolving, and we're moving in that direction, and we're guided by that evolutionary purpose. And so in that respect, the organization, rather than being structured and hierarchical, it's like a living system, and it's evolving and it's moving forward. Now, it's fair to say, and he talks about in the book, that people operate at all of these levels. And, you know, in any organization, you have different people that are kind of operating at these levels of consciousness. But some organizations have really made kind of decided strides to walk towards this evolutionary teal way of operating. And he features in the book 12 organizations that he studied over a long period of time to you know, really understand what was it that enabled them to achieve this. And the book basically in the front half talks about these different layers. It then kind of defines the breakthroughs at some of these orange, green and teal layers, and talks about the benefits and some of the issues with that, and what operating predominantly at those levels can cost us. And then the back half of the book, part 3, really looks at how we kind of really dissect all of those elements of the evolutionary teal organizations. It kind of cross relates them with some of the other layers at points and brings lots of real stories about how organizations have transformed and moved towards this way of working. And it just resonates so much with me and over my career as to the kind of organization that I've always wanted to work in, really, and the kind of place that I would like to be, and for people to feel the ways that people would want to feel. And as I was sharing at the beginning of the call, it's interesting how when you're working in an organization that predominantly operates from an achievement orange, there are some people that will be hugely energizing for. But there is some issues with that because we have lots of red tape, there's lots of control, there's lots of things that can sometimes, for someone that feels more like they operate from an evolutionary teal or a pluralistic green family or an orientated space, that it's quite difficult to match with that kind of culture. And so, yeah, the book really spoke to me. And I think for many years, I'd worked, and my career had been within the orange kind of organization, this achievement orange organization, where it's all about innovation and progress and meritocracy. And within that structure, I was creating things like behavioral frameworks and organizational cultural change that's going to be moving from this point to this point. And it was very deterministic in the way that we try to approach those things. And for years, there was kind of success in that domain, but there was also points of that felt somehow not quite right or wrong, didn't quite match with how I wanted to show up and the work that I wanted to do. And so this book really kind of opened the door for me on, actually, there are many other ways to do this, and it doesn't need to be deterministic, it can be evolving and emergent. And so when I first looked at this book about 5 years ago, it must be about 5 years ago now, but it just really spoke to me and helped me to rethink how I was showing up. So that's why I like it. Questions? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I was on mute. Thank you. And that's really very good. First of all, it shows how inspired you are by the book and how passionately you are connecting with the book. I can hear from your voice, I can sense from how you are describing this. And to me, that this is the kind of organization we want to see, we want to be in, each one of us would want to be in. What are the practical tips or practical ways of bringing this in that the book offers?
Well, I think there's a couple of bits that are kind of held to the end of the book that are kind of sobering, and on the wrong day when it's cloudy and you're not kind of feeling the love for the work that we're doing, you can kind of feel a little bit like, oh, wow, if the leaders don't get on board with this, it's never going to happen. And he really talks about how impactful that is. And so there's a lot of health warnings towards the end of the book on what are the conditions that need to be present in order for us to make this work in organizations. And he does talk about that you can create a cell, if you like, inside a small group of cells, like an organism inside the organization, where it is very teal in what is a very achievement orange or a very green or a very less evolved organizational construct. You can create that, but it takes work. If you want to create it at the organizational level, there's a big role in the CEO and those directors coming at this. Also, the habits can be quite die hard to make some of these transitions. And I think what the book does well, it's got a few tables in here. So it does try to simplify a lot of the principles into some helpful tables. And I think those have been really valuable, because when you look at them, you can kind of go, we were operating more in an orange way here, whereas actually the green version or the teal version might be this. And so I think the book's quite helpful for distilling some of that complexity into some helpful visuals. And there are some assessment tools out there that have come into the market that are based on the book. And in fact, one of the other organisations that's featured in the book, which you may know, is an organisation called Holacracy One. And so obviously they're a consulting firm that are based on the Holacracy model and the book, another good book, which is all about, you know, a purpose-driven, self-organising, organisational design. And so, you know, he pulls on some of those pieces in here. I think one of the bits that really stands out to me as well is that we have to challenge our thinking around what we believe is true. And there's one example that's shared in the book, and it's just so powerful. There was a study done of over 10,000 leaders. 50% of those leaders were leaders that believed that people could be trusted, that they were inherently good, and that they would, given autonomy and empowerment, deliver great work. And then you had a second group of leaders that believed the opposite, that people couldn't be trusted, that they were not necessarily going to deliver great work unless they were closely monitored and managed within an inch of their lives. And the outstanding results from the survey were that both leaders were right. Both groups had the exact results that they thought would show up. So the leaders that believed in their people, trusted their people, wanted to give them the autonomy and empowerment, great work was happening, there was high energy, engagement was high, people were generally happy to work there. And on the flip side, the leaders that believed the opposite, they were met with hiding of mistakes, backbiting, really non-inclusive behaviours that were going on under the surface of what was probably quite a toxic environment to be working under. And so it takes me back to the Hamlet quote of there's no such thing as there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And that actually the mindset that we have as leaders and the culture that we believe exists is actually what we end up creating. So I think the first step is to start understanding the belief, and then thinking about how we can challenge some of that and move some of that. And I think the book holds lots and lots of examples in there as to how some companies have taken that. And you've got, really high profile CEOs that are quoted throughout the book for the things that they were doing and saying. And so there's lots of practical advice in here, and it's so well broken down. So if you're dealing with HR, there's a whole chapter on how to deal with HR. There's a whole chapter how to deal with just trust or people management. So I think, lots of practical stuff in the book. Any other thoughts, questions?
I was muted again. Thank you. I think you are tempting me enough to read the book myself.
Good. Good. Yeah. So one thing that I will say is if you go onto the website, he actually has a rule on there where he has an evolutionary kind of approach to the sale of the book. So basically you can order a copy and you can pay whatever you think the book is worth. So there's no price tag necessarily. You can go online to Amazon and places like that to get it, but go to his website as well, because there's also loads of great resources and things that he shares on there. And I think it's just reinventingorganisations.com to go there and have a little look at that. So yeah. Any other questions?
Terence cannot speak, so he has posted a question here. Is there anything in the book that you disagree with?
I think this was, there's not a single thing in there that I felt was incorrect. I know there has been some critique of the book, and if you look for it, you will find that there are some people that do fundamentally disagree. If there's one bit that I think is still up for grabs, it's towards the very end of the book, he transcends organizational constructs and psychology and consciousness, and he moves into what would a teal society look like. and what does our continued evolution as a human race potentially start to look like? And that's a bit of the book that has come into contact with a lot of critique from futurologists and various people. So I've read the book twice. I've listened to it more than once, and in the audio book, I do really appreciate the work that went into producing such a lovely audio experience. And so for me, it just makes sense. And I think the struggle that I have is how to create more of it. How to help people move more towards it.
Let's catch up on that between us offline. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely keen to try myself as well. Cool. Any question from anyone else? Usually the another question Terence asks for the benefit of the audience as well. How much is it? How big is it? Is it easily readable? And we have seen the size of the book, and you also have mentioned about the cost of the book, that you can pay whatever you want. Mm-hmm. How easy read is it? Because some books are people find very hard to read, even mm-hmm. though the material and the content is good, and some people find it very hard to read. And some books are easy read, some books are given through storytelling method and things like mm-hmm. that. How do you find this book?
Well, I will say that I'm someone who is severely dyslexic, and so reading is not a strength at all. However, for me, the audiobook was the piece that really enabled me to access the material in a useful way. The difficulty with it is there is so much contained in here that the bit that I wish that I could do is just download the book into my head so that I could hold on to it. But it is one of those things that I don't know if you can see, but I've got kind of little tabs and things in the side of mine. So, I treat it as a tool, and I have no shame in going back and rereading passages several times, but it is not something that we can just digest. It's certainly not a one sitting kind of read book. But I think, an iterative approach to taking it on board is probably necessary. There is some beautiful use of language in here. He's very articulate, but with that, maybe sometimes a term or a word that we don't fully understand, and so have a dictionary close by or Google or something. But generally, in terms of the storytelling, there's lots of it. Every principle that he lays out, there's evidence to support it, and it's shown through either quotes or stories or accounts that have been fed in here. And he introduces you towards the start of the book to all of the 12 organizations. He gives you an overview of what they are. So if there's one particular organization you're really drawn to, then you can you can focus more in on that. What I would say for ease, there's also a fantastic index at the back, as well as a group of resources and tools and things. And so I found that has been quite useful for directing further reading, and also just finding the bits that particularly resonate or that I want to focus in on again. So you can use it a bit like a manual, I think, although he does say it's not a manual. So.
Can anyone else would like to ask a question, please? One last question. Go on.
I bought this book a couple of months ago, but I never had a chance to read through. But recently I've done an enterprise agile coaching training, and I got a bit of oversight of that book. But I think this is something definitely I'll try and probably read maybe in this month or coming month. So it's not particularly any question. So I thought maybe I'll just speak out.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. Anyone else?
Thank you.
So Terence is asking if there is anything that I've read that would be similar to it. Although I say not to read. for me, this was such a standout piece. I've not come across a book that I've had such a reaction to, and that was actually one of the reasons for being invited, or one of the kind of prerequisites for being invited from Prema was, you know, what's a book that you're really passionate about? And I think this just stood out to me. Another book that's had a similar reaction in me would be John Smart's Sooner Safer Happier, because of the way that it's distilled agility. But again, I think a different beast entirely. So yeah.
This is for David.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool.
Any other questions?
Any other question? Rohit also feeling a bit poorly, and he wants to get home soon as well. He's in his cousin's place, so probably it's a good idea to move to the next one. And I will catch up with you, Ed, offline to talk more about it. And are you available on LinkedIn for if people want to catch up with you?
Absolutely, yeah. Do link up with me on there. So I'll just put my name in the chat, Ed Midson. You should be able to find me there. So I'd be happy to meet you all. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been really lovely.
Yeah, thank you.